And speaking of Sri Aurobindo, today the 15th is the day of his birth. It is also the day of Indian independence. The 15th of August has always had a great significance in the cosmic history. Napoleon also was born on the 15th of August. And there are other significant dates of certain wars, revolutions that have started on the 15th of August. So in the cosmic calendar, it is a date where great movements, great things start, great things culminate. And Sri Aurobindo, he was born more than 100 years ago. India celebrated his birth centenary in 1972, and he was born in 1872. And his father, at that time India was under the British rule, and people were very anxious to imitate the British ways of life, the British customs, because they were so much impressed by the Western vigor and style of life, when our own things had been decaying. So this small boy was removed from his house, and at the age of 5 was entered into a convent school in the Himalayas, in Darjeeling, at the foothills of the Himalayas, the snow hills. And there he remembers, one day in sleep, something dark entered into his being. And since then, he started feeling a certain heaviness. But he was a reticent boy, and he didn't tell it to anybody. When he was 7, along with his brothers, he was brought to England by his father and left with certain friends. I believe they were priests, Protestant priests, a family, with the strict injunction that these children should never have anything to do with things Indian. They must be brought up all British. And this boy grew up there in the Western ways, and he distinguished himself in the school in Latin, Greek, German, won laurels. But he was not a particularly religious boy. He had no faith as such in either God or the divine or anything. He just grew up in that atmosphere. Once when he was in Cambridge, when he was about 17 or 16, he was reading in the library translations in English by Max Muller. Dr. Max Muller is German Orientalist, of the Upanishads, the Indian scriptures. And there he came across the concept of the self, the Atman of which they speak, that it is unchanging, that it is immutable, that it is eternal, that it stays always when everything passes. Now this concept of the self, Atman, appealed to the boy very much. And he decided that this is something which is worth realizing. I must get at the truth of it. That was his first opening to the breath of the Spirit. When he was 21, he completed his education and he came back to India. And the moment he got down from the ship and landed on the shores of India in Bombay, a vast calm, a great silence descended upon him. And that heaviness, which had started when he was 5 years old, that left him, and he felt light again. He took some service in Western India. He was teaching French, English, but he was also at that time, he had not known his own mother tongue. So he started learning his mother tongue with the help of a teacher, learning Sanskrit and other Indian languages, familiarizing himself with the Indian tradition, because all these were foreign to him. And he, side by side, he took interest in the political situation in India and started initiating movements for secret revolution in the army, among the princes, and so on. And it was during those days, once when he was going into the Broadway, so much full of vehicles and men and cattle and all that, that there was a possibility of an accident. He willed there should be no accident. And suddenly, a certain luminous Godhead emerged out of his being, mastered the situation, and the accident was averted. That was his first experience, that there is an indwelling divine which rules and governs our life. A few years later, some of his friends wanted to visit a temple of Kali, the Divine Mother, on the river bank. He had no special faith or interest in going to temples or seeing idols and images. But because the friends insisted, he accompanied them. The friends went inside the temple on the banks of the river, but he stood outside and he casually looked inside. And in the temple, Indian temples, you will know that the image is sanctum sanctorum is always straight from the door at the center. Indian temple is always designed on the model of a human body. The divine is in the heart center. So in the temple, stone temple also, at the center, in the depth, the image was there. He expected to see a nicely cut stone image. But suddenly he saw there, instead of a stone image, the world mother regarding him intently. That was his experience, second experience of the divine in form, taking a form. Few years later, when he was in the mountains of Kashmir, a great place of beauty in India, in the north, surrounded on mountains on all the sides, when he was walking on the ridge of a hill, he suddenly felt the whole world disappearing. There was only a presence, what he called the vacant infinite. And he was to later write sonnets. He was a born poet. He wrote sonnets on all these three experiences: the indwelling Godhead, the stone goddess, the nirvana or the vacant infinite. And later he got involved in revolutionary activity of the manufacture of bombs and throwing them on the rulers. And he was implicated in a false case by the government and locked up in jail for 1 full year. And at that time, he was reading and studying this Gita on his own and practicing the yoga that the Gita teaches. At that time once, he was put in a solitary cell so that he could be less harmful to other convicts. And one day people were passing and they saw him sitting above the ground. So they came and asked him, "Have you got that power to levitate yourself?" He said, "No." But they said, "No, you are not sitting on the ground. You are 1 foot above." So he said, "Perhaps I was not aware." That is, automatically the body had become light and gone beyond the operation of the law of gravity. It was during that time that one day when he was practicing this yoga and he was taking his constitutional in the compound, he was allowed it, he suddenly felt that that huge banyan tree or whatever tree under which he would rest for a while in the sun, the tree was no longer there. But instead there was this Lord Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the universal Godhead. The divine spread all over the universe in a form. He couldn't believe it. He rubbed his eyes. Again, there is no tree, there is only the Lord. He looked around and found that the convicts, the wardens, everybody had the face of God, had the face of Vasudeva. He kept the experience to himself. And later at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, when he was taken to the court to stand trial, he saw that the British judge, the Indian consul, all of them had the faces of that God. He was overwhelmed at this apocalypse, at this revelation of the universal Godhead. And then he got a message: you should retire from politics. I have a different assignment for you. Your job now is not the liberation of your country, but the liberation of man from ignorance, pain, suffering. So he was acquitted without any effort. He was told from within, don't make any effort. I will see that you are free. And he tore out all the notes that he had prepared for the lawyer. And the British judge acquitted him. And he left politics, retired to Pondicherry, which was then in French India, distinct from British India, and delved into himself in the exploration of his consciousness. He followed no traditional path. He just allowed the inner divinity to show him the way, trusted himself to the divine guidance. His mind had become absolutely silent. His thought activity ceased. And thereafter, till he passed away, he did not think. All that he spoke, all that he wrote, came to him in a mass from above. He was absolutely silent. And for 4 years, he underwent the spiritual concentration, exploration of himself, and then he emerged out of his self-retirement when the mother came and joined him from France, and he gave to the world his knowledge, the body of knowledge which he had received. A new journal was started called the Arya, in which it was, at the beginning, it was both English and French, and he propounded what he had received. And reading those pages of the Arya, Dr. Annie Besant, who was then the president of the Theosophical Society in Madras, she exclaimed that she had never seen such a divine afflatus in anybody's writings. And this journal continued for 7 years. And when he stopped writing, he said, when he was asked why he stopped, he said, I have given only 1/10 of the knowledge that I received. Mankind, you will not be able to absorb any further knowledge of this. That is why it had to stop. And the main philosophy he propounded is the philosophy of life divine. That this world is not a snare, is not a temptation, but it is the field for the development of the divine consciousness. God is growing on this earth, and we are all his instruments. And nature herself is developing consciousness in the various grades and species, and man is the highest creature she has evolved, and hereafter man has to lead the movement. Man has to precipitate the yoga of nature, which is the development of consciousness and revelation of the Godhead on earth, in the world. And he discusses all the existing theories of knowledge, shows their excellences, their strong points, their limitations, and presents his philosophy of the spiritual evolution of consciousness, which everyone will have to go through one day or the other, leading the development of consciousness from man to Superman and from Superman to the God. So man will become something more than man. And it is as new faculties develop, faculties above the mind, faculties of inspiration, illumination, intuition, truth consciousness, cosmic consciousness, as these things develop, the world will become a different place to live in. Error, falsehood, suffering, pain will become memories of the past. That was his philosophy. And he was not content to give a metaphysic. He worked out a way of practice, a discipline, which he called the synthesis of yoga, in which he took the best of all the past yogic traditions, synthesized them, and developed his own yoga of self-perfection, which develops all the faculties in man, and hewed the way for everyone to develop a total man, a perfect man in a perfect society. Not content with that, he studied the development of humanity at the political level, at the social level, in two series of writings called The Human Cycle and The Ideal of Human Unity, and came to the conclusion, reasoned, rational conclusion, based upon history, documentation, that mankind is now approaching a spiritual age, that all the nations are developing towards a kind of global oneness, towards the ideal of human unity. He looked into the Indian scriptures of the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, to find if there is any corroboration of his vision, his experience, and his yoga in them. And the essays of the Gita, the secret of the Veda, philosophy of the Upanishads, they are all his studies. He does not seek to justify his system, drawing support from them, but he just sees whether the ancients, the earlier seers, had this possibility in mind of the perfectibility of man, the conquest of death, and the establishment of total harmony in the universe. And he shows they had that vision, but humanity was not ready for working out that vision. But the time has now come. And he is such a universalist, a free thinker, that he would not ask you to accept anything on faith, but rationally. And he wrote at least 15,000 pages, which are being now issued in collected works. And he said that this is the teaching that I have received. Now, when this is actualized, there will be another goal, another ideal, another teaching. Knowledge cannot be final. No truth can be exclusive. All truths are contributory to the manifestation of one truth. And that truth is dynamic. It is not static. Each moment, some new things are coming in this universe. And we have to be constantly on the march. We cannot afford to look always to the past and dwell upon the past, but go in the future. It was only yesterday that I was reading one of the beautiful booklets placed on this table, where Madame Blavatsky says, don't follow me, don't follow my path, but go where I show in the future. That is also what Sri Aurobindo says. Look to the future. We do not belong to the past dawns, but to the noons of the future. That is Sri Aurobindo. Yes?
I have one.
Yes.
In mentioning the works of Aurobindo and how he got his divine inspiration, Blavatsky sort of claims the same thing with the secret doctrine, being at 1/10 of the knowledge that man
Yes.
can absorb.
Yes.
Do all the books of knowledge that each group or movement has, do they all come from the same source, or something handed by the Tishu Lama, or is that where it all came from, or was it even before?
All knowledge comes from one source. The instruments of transmitting that knowledge may be different. The aspects of that knowledge may be different. The knowledge that Blavatsky received may stress on certain aspects of life And what Sri Aurobindo emphasizes may emphasize on certain other directions. But I know fundamentally the truths are the same. The truths are the same. Madame Blavatsky received through the adepts, the great ones. Sri Aurobindo says he does not receive from any this or that being, but from the higher consciousness. There is no form there. But he told a trusted secretary of Dr. Annie Besant that both she and I have been given the same vision. Yes?
You spoke of 2 points in the heart. Now, the one in the front, that would be connected to the lower emotional nature. And the second one, the one in the back, is the Christ spirit, would be connected to the higher spiritual self.
You can say so. Only the emotional center is connected both the higher emotions and the lower emotions. But the love center is directly connected with the divine. And that center is the cardiac center, behind the cardiac center, behind the center of the chest, inside is that center.
Is that place, if I heard you right, you thought it was a place in the body corresponding to the confluence of the 3 rivers?
No, that will be here, in the center of the eyebrows.
Oh, the sacrum
Yeah.
is also a special place.
Yeah. It is the center of the eyebrows, what we call the center of vision and will, where 3 main nerve channels meet. One from the right, one from the left, and one from the center. They meet there. Yes?
As I understand it, one should be developing in all 3 areas
Yes.
concurrently.
That's right. The age of exclusive development is gone.
Is one, how is one to determine intermediate goals, or where one is at this level of unfoldment, or its present level of unfoldment? Is there a way?
Yes. Wherever one feels the urge to progress, the more awakening and that fire of aspiration. For some, it is in the mind. They want to know things, they want to understand first. The others, it is awake here. They like to feel oneness, they like to spread love, they like to unite with the divine here. So normally, one can know where one is more developed, and that should be the starting point. But the ideal is that you may make that a starting point, but all the points must be covered. But to start with, one starts where nature has prepared one.
Strongest.
Yes. Yes.
Well, in answer to that too, I think that if you did any type of action yoga or any type of work, your mind is stimulated too. So if you do one, the other ones are
Yes,
brought in.
exactly. This is the right thing. Because once you start, you find that everything is stimulated wherever you start. And you should be broad enough to pursue on all the levels. Yes, yes.
Oh, the thought that came to me when she said that was, if it's stimulated on your own, it seems that then you would develop all 3. But sometimes it seems like I don't really know how to say this. My impression is that people who go like to some guru,
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
Lutanana, who I don't know much about,
Yeah.
I only went to one, like meeting, and I missed the whole point completely. What
Yeah.
was happening to the other people,
Yeah.
I missed the boat.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like then they're just in one dimension. It was done to them. I don't know.
These, most of the Indian gurus who are teaching in America, they belong to past traditions and will always preach one-sided development. Most of them. But theosophy or Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and yoga, or teachings cast in such this mold of a holistic spirit, they will not countenance this kind of approach except at the beginning. In the beginning, one starts where one is strong. But these gurus always tell you, go that way and end there. That doesn't solve anybody's problem, neither your problem nor the world's problem. So that is why we have to, use these teachings, use these gurus' teachings up to a point and then go beyond them. Yes?
In Pondicherry,
Yes.
how is this brought about?
Yes. We have in our ashram, a collective life and individual life organized in such a way that whether it is a child, a woman or a man, whoever it is, his life flows simultaneously every day into 4 channels, 4 streams of development. There is first great stress laid on physical development, physical consciousness. There are the asanas, there are physical culture exercises, trained, scientific, and each one is encouraged to participate in it so that the body, which is the foundation of the whole edifice, is prepared from the beginning. Second, there is in this community of 2,000 people plenty of work to be done, and each one, you can understand that, don't you? And each one undertakes to do 6 to 8 hours of work as his karma yoga, his labor of love, learning to pour his energies in a disinterested way, in a non-selfish way, as an offering to the divine. So that is karma yoga. And devotion, love is encouraged. People meditate, people pray, and there is a lot of stress on devotion to the teacher, devotion to the ideal, devotion to the divine. There is helpful music, helpful cultural activities, all pointed on striking the potentiality of love and devotion and warm emotions, right from the children onward. And there is the vast teaching given by the teachers, Sri Aurobindo and the mother, and an immense literature that has grown up around them from disciples, expounding the ramifications of yoga, the philosophy, study of comparative thoughts, and all. There is a center of education, there are private classes, where groups studies particular subjects. So there is an intellectual stimulation. So all on 4 levels, there is a continuous effort and to grow. And people devote themselves for individual change of consciousness, change of nature, observing how far they have changed in their collective life. So everything is interrelated. And there is what I called yesterday to somebody else, is developing 4-fold perfection of man, combining all the faculties. An artist may be essentially an artist, but he will also work, not necessarily in a studio. He may be working in a garden, as the things require. A judge may be sitting, a High Court judge, Supreme Court judge. When he comes there, he will be sitting washing the dishes. Somebody else who is fitted, he will go and teach. He may have been an engineer elsewhere. So, it is the spirit with which one does, the call one that feels, that freedom is given. And emphasis is laid on the truth and the ideal and not on the person. So it is, though it is 23 years since here in the past, 27 years here in the passed away, 6 years since mother passed away, the whole thing goes on smoothly. It is a experiment in spiritual democracy, where so many people can live without conflict, for respecting the freedom of each other. We read it them in books, here it is demonstrated.
Do you have direct help from Aurobindo?
Yes, yes. Most get books, help through their books, immense amount of writings, where every situation, likely situation in yoga or experience is envisaged and answered. Or those who pray and concentrate, they do get ready guidance from the mother or Sri Aurobindo.
What I mean is, when you talked about a person who has the direct divine love in all of the area, do you have this?
Yes, there are individuals. Not everybody is not in an identical state of development. It is a whole humanity is there. And there are varying degrees of development. But there are some who have touched the core and who embody and radiate that love. They help others.
Presence. Maybe that's what she There's a very strong presence. Are they encouraged to read other works too?
Yes, we have a great library and comparative study and in courses of philosophy, yoga and things. Yes. 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 This is essential if you want to broaden the mind, and extend the consciousness. To know what everybody has to say and what everybody is experiencing is essential.
All the members just stay there permanently. I mean, they stay there for the rest of their lives. They wouldn't travel.
Permanent members stay there always, for life. But there are many who come and go, participate in the life. There are some. But about 1,700 people stay there permanently. 300 to 400 are those who come and go, stay for a few weeks, few months, a year.
We have 700 too.
Yes. That 1,700 includes the 700 students.
And there are families.
Yes, but they came as families, but they don't live as families in the ashram.
The children live alone.
No, children who have come without their parents, they are put in hostels. Otherwise, we allow them to stay with their parents. But family life is not a part of ashram life.
Would you say some more about that?
That is, if a husband and wife with a child, they come, they are received, they are lodged, they are admitted. But thereafter, they can't have sex. They can't have more children there. In the ashram, there is no sex. And a husband can't boss over his wife there, which is very common in the East,
Do the males and females live separately then?
as they choose. Some choose to live separately, some choose to live together, but as seekers, as sadhaks, practitioners of yoga.
This is not true in Aurobindo.
No. Now this was a severely yogic institution, but now an extension of the ashram has been made in Aurobindo, 7 miles away, where on the same principles a community is growing, but more reflecting, a human life as it normally is. That is, they can have children, they can have sex, but no drugs. That is prohibited there.
What is your evaluation of what is going on now in both places? Can you talk about that?
The ashram was an intensive effort to work out a scheme for a pattern of new type of living. That has been achieved. So now it is being projected into the world, not requiring people to be yogis, but to accept the ideal of human unity, development of consciousness, development of new faculties in a free way, without being constrained by old religions or old traditions, and people requiring to belong to this nation or that country, but as citizens of a world, without private wealth, a common economy, each one contributing and each one being maintained, supported. So it is a new experiment. And things like sex or drink, they are recognized as legitimate parts of human life. Only, Mother does not envisage marriage as an institution to continue in the new world. She says a man and a woman should live together only as long as they love each other. Otherwise, it is a waste of life. Humanity is not yet prepared for that, But whatever it is, she envisages two things. In the new future, there will not be individual families. There will not be private wealth. It may take 100 years. We don't know, but that is going to be.
We call that the nuclear family. That is, we see that disappearing here too. It's not always in the same spiritual way, but people are living in all kinds of different arrangements rather than the nuclear family. Just may disappear.
I think these are experiments, People do it in different ways, but we are in a transitional stage at the moment. All kinds of experiments are being tried. Many will be eliminated, and those which have a chance to prove themselves, they will survive.
Would you tell us something of your personal experience with Sri Aurobindo?
Actually, Sri Aurobindo had retired into solitude before the ashram formed. So we never had a direct, kind of access, talk or meeting with him. We had all these things with the mother, but not with Sri Aurobindo. Though I was there for 11 years before he passed away. So he was an inspiration and a guide. We would write to him, he would reply. But except 4 times a year, when he appeared to the public, and there was a silent communion with each one, there was no outer contact.
I think that's enough questions for now. We're running over time.
Yes.
One quick one on the same point. When he was in retirement, was he writing then, or was he through writing?
He was through writing.
So he was just in community.
Yes, yes. He revised what he had written earlier and all that. But his main writing work had been over. I think as you said, we can stop.